Welcome. Let's think about your life for a second. It's probably the most complex system you'll ever have to manage. And if that's true, then your habits, they're your personal operating system. So today, we're going to treat habit formation like a straight-up engineering problem. I'm going to give you a playbook to find the bugs, rewrite the code, and basically upgrade your own personal OS for peak performance.
All right, let's pull up the schematic. Here is our 5-part playbook. First, we're going to diagnose the core bug that causes our systems to crash. Then we'll lay out the guiding principle that governs the whole thing. And from there, we'll get into deployment, upgrades, and finally, full-on system automation.
Okay, first things first. Any good engineer starts with a diagnostic. You gotta find the root cause of the failure, right? Well, in our personal systems, the single biggest bug, the one that causes so many crashes, is a really subtle misunderstanding between two concepts: motion and action.
To really see this bug in action, check out this case study from the University of Florida. A photography professor ran this brilliant, simple A/B test. He split his class in two. The quantity group would be graded purely on the number of photos they took. The quality group, their entire grade was based on producing just one single perfect picture. So what happened? Well, the results were kind of shocking. By the end of the semester, all the best, highest quality photos came from the group that was focused on quantity. So why? It's because the quality group got stuck theorizing about what makes a perfect photo. Meanwhile, the quantity group was out there taking hundreds of pictures, trying new things, learning from their mistakes. They were constantly getting their reps in. They were doing, not just thinking about doing. And that right there, that perfectly illustrates the core bug in our system. We get stuck in motion, the planning, the researching, the strategizing. And it feels like progress, but here's the catch. It doesn't actually produce an outcome. It's a form of procrastination with zero risk. Action, on the other hand, well, that's the behavior that actually delivers a result. It's not just brainstorming titles, it's actually writing the page. So here's the crucial takeaway. If you want to master a habit, the key isn't to have the perfect plan. It's all about repetition. You don't need a detailed roadmap. You just need to start. You just need to get your reps in. So we've identified the bug. Now we need to understand the fundamental law of physics that governs the whole system we're trying to optimize. For human behavior, it all comes down to one thing: the law of least friction. And look, this is not a personal failure. It's a core design constraint of our brains. I mean, think about it. Just like any efficient system, our brains are hardwired to conserve energy. It means we will always gravitate towards the option that requires the least amount of work. We are fundamentally engineered for convenience.
What's really fascinating is how this law plays out on a massive global scale. The historian Jared Diamond pointed out that agriculture spread twice as fast across Europe and Asia as it did in the Americas. Why? Simple. An east-west route has pretty similar climates, so it's easy to keep growing the same crops. But a north-south route, you've got massive climate swings, which creates a ton more friction. Even over centuries, the path of least resistance always wins.
And that gives us our prime directive as engineers of our own lives. Trying to use sheer motivation to power through a tough habit, it's like trying to force water through a kinked hose by cranking up the pressure. It takes a ton of effort, and it creates a lot of tension. The smarter, more elegant solution: just remove the bend. Reduce the friction in the system itself.
Okay, we have our principle. Now we can move on to deployment. And the first rule of optimizing any system, I don't care if it's a factory floor or your morning routine, is this: you have to standardize the process before you can improve it.
I mean, think about it. You can't optimize a workflow that isn't even running yet, right? It's the exact same thing with habits. Before you start worrying about making your workout better or your writing process faster, you first have to master the art of just showing up. You have to establish that baseline routine first. These new standard habits, they become the entry point for what we can call decisive moments. These are those tiny little forks in the road that have a huge impact on where you end up. That choice to put on your running shoes, that's a decisive moment. It might take 30 seconds, but it dictates the next hour of your life, steering you towards the gym instead of the sofa.
So how do we engineer these decisive moments to be as frictionless as possible? Well, that brings us to the tactical upgrade for our personal OS, the 2-minute rule. This rule is so simple, but it is incredibly powerful.
Any new habit you want to install has to be scaled down to a version that takes less than 2 minutes to do. Now, the goal here is not to get the final result. The goal is simply to make starting the behavior so ridiculously easy that it's actually harder not to do it. This table just shows perfectly how you can reverse engineer any huge goal into what's called a gateway habit. Your goal isn't to run a marathon today, it's to master the art of putting on your running shoes. The goal isn't to write a book, it's to master the art of writing just one sentence. You master the entry point and the rest will follow. So once that 2-minute gateway habit is locked in, once it's standardized, then you can start to optimize. Using a process called habit shaping, you just gradually level up. You master getting home by 10 p.m. Then you master turning off your devices. Each step builds on the last one, scaling the system up to your real goal without ever creating a huge spike in friction. And that brings us to the final and highest level of system design, automation. This is how you harden your personal operating system, making good habits the automatic default path, and bad ones, well, making them nearly impossible to even access. A key strategy here is what's called a commitment device. It's basically an engineering choice you make right now to lock in your behavior in the future. How does it work? By adding a massive amount of friction to your bad habits. When the author Victor Hugo had his assistant lock away all of his clothes so he couldn't go outside, that forced him to stay in and write. That was a commitment device. Back in the 1800s, a store owner named John Henry Patterson was on the verge of bankruptcy. Then, in just 6 months, he turned a profit of $5,000, which was a fortune back then. What changed? He installed one of the world's first cash registers. That single action automated ethical behavior because it made it almost impossible for employees to steal. He didn't try to change his people, he hardened the system to make the right choice automatic. The most powerful way to automate your personal system is through these one-time actions that just pay dividends forever. We're talking about things like buying a really good mattress, unsubscribing from junk email, or just using smaller plates. Each one is a single decision that reduces future friction and saves your willpower for the things that really matter. They are the ultimate energy-saving upgrades for your OS. So, in the end, the goal isn't more discipline or more willpower. It's just better design. When you engineer an environment where doing the right thing is the path of least resistance, you create a system where good habits aren't just something you hope for. They become virtually guaranteed. So that brings us to the final question. Looking at your own system, what's the one point of friction you can remove starting today?